press your brain button right now as we take a few minutes to go over a huge piece of legislation. It's called the Indian Removal Act of 1830, and we're going to take a look at it right now. So Andrew Jackson, you better watch out, because we're coming to get you this time. All right, let's go get her done right now. All right, let's set context first. By 1830, most of the Native American tribes, especially in the Northeast, have been annexed, sent away, have been destroyed, have been broken up. But there are hundreds of thousands of Native Americans that are living on Indian territories within state borders down south. We're talking about Florida, we're talking about Alabama, we're talking about Georgia, we're talking about Mississippi. There's a humongous pressure that's building on the federal government by poor whites down south. They want to get their hands on this land. So they elect their leader in 1828, and that's the Democrat Andrew Jackson, who makes it his mission to free up this land. And he puts his ink on his first big piece of legislation in 1830 called the Indian Removal Act. And it's a squeaker. It passed the House, I believe, by only one vote. And there was a lot of opposition in the North. A lot of missionaries were against this because they saw Native Americans as being acculturized, as becoming civilized, as being brought into the Republic. This was Jefferson's and Washington's idea, and they'll have nothing to do with this forcibly removal idea of Andrew Jackson. There were even some Southerners against it, like Davy Crockett, the congressman from Tennessee, who voted against the Indian Removal Act. Yada, 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 it passed. And now Andrew Jackson has the ability, they say negotiate treaties, but really to force treaties on these Native Americans and to forcibly remove them with state militias from their homes. And that's what begins to occur as soon as this law is passed. All 5 of the civilized tribes, we're talking about the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, we're talking about the Muscogee Creek, the Seminoles, the Cherokees, are going to be rounded up and at gunpoint sent thousands of miles to these new reservations on federal land, not state land, over in Oklahoma, and that land's going to be taken away also. We also have court challenges. A lot of the Cherokees felt that their best avenue wasn't to fight with guns and with bows and with arrows, but rather to go to the Supreme Court. And a really, really big decision comes out in 1832. It's called Worcester versus Georgia, where John Marshall actually sides with the Native Americans and says, you can't forcibly remove these guys. These guys have a right to their land like everybody else. And I think Andrew Jackson's words are something akin to, John Marshall made his decision, now let him go enforce it. And he goes on to say that if you light a fire under these guys, eventually it'll get hot enough and they're going to leave. And those treaties begin to get signed right away. We have the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek. We have the Treaty of New Echota. We have a number of treaties that starts forcing these Native Americans out. The Seminoles, however, would have none of that. They were the only tribe that fought to the end, and thousands of them ended up in the Florida swamps living out their lives, many of them intermarrying with slaves from that area. But the majority of these Native Americans, the 100,000 plus, are going to be put on the Trail of Tears. Thousands of miles to Oklahoma. 1/4 of all Native Americans on the Trail of Tears died on the way from disease, from starvation, from warfare, from being attacked by whites. A really quick story is one of the tribes was crossing the Ohio River in southern Illinois, and the ferry operators were charging these Native Americans $1 a head when they were charging whites 12 cents a head. And there were hundreds of those Native Americans that froze on the side of the river waiting for the ferry because they couldn't afford to cross. But there we go, guys. At this point, by 1838, we have really wiped the Southeast at least, east of the Mississippi, clean of Native Americans, and that land is gobbled up quicker than you can say gobbled up by whites. They actually had lotteries where they were giving this land away to poor whites who wanted that land. So the Native Americans are now pushed off to these reservations, some of the worst land in the country, in the dry, arid, deserty land of Oklahoma where nothing really grows. And then even there, they're going to be pushed farther into the interior with further discoveries of oil and such like that. So the Indian Removal Act, it's a really ugly episode of American history. Remember the Trail of Tears, and remember Andrew Jackson. He don't care about the Supreme Court, at least not when it came to that. So I hope that you learned a little bit about the Trail of Tears and the Indian Removal Act, and we'll see you guys next time that you press my button. And if you haven't subscribed, why don't you press that big red button right there? What could be more fun than pressing that big red button? Look at it, it's so shiny red. And that'll take you off to the land of subscriptions. And I'll tell you one more thing. Where attention goes, guys, energy flows.